Hello everyone, this is the story of, what if Naruto melts under Tsunade's gaze? Food issues. A blonde-haired boy was grumbling as he made his way through the mass of people on the street. His brow was furrowed in a deep frown as he thought of things he should rather be doing other than just searching for a woman he hasn't even heard of before. It was Almo's. 3 weeks and the search for this elusive woman is still ongoing, and it wasn't about to stop anytime soon. It drove him almost to the brink of insanity as he tailed his perverted sensei endlessly day after day. Sure, that teacher of his taught him a new technique, and quite frankly he hasn't perfected it in the least bit, but at least his Baka sensei should be kind enough to supervise him. But no, the old man opted to hang around in clubs all day to be surrounded by the ladies, coining them his so-called research. Anyo, Ero Senin, I'm hungry, can we just put this search off for tomorrow? I mean, my feet are killing me and I'm so hungry. Nay, what do you think? Great idea, nay, the blonde boy said to his sensei that was walking alongside him. The old man, however, remained expressionless as they trudged through the crowd. Seeing his companion's lack of reaction, the blonde boy continued, you know, it's getting really late and I haven't eaten for such a long time. I haven't even snacked yet. My stomach is grumbling and honestly, I'm about to die of starvation. Nay, Ero Senin, you wouldn't want to see me suffer, right? The boy asked his sensei. To make his pleas more convincing, he added the puppy dog look. The white-haired man just sighed in defeat. It's true that they have been going about this search all day and this search of theirs is fruitless. That woman sure is oving around a lot. Somebody ought to glue her backside to a chair, the old man thought, utterly depressed. Fine, Naruto, let's go get something to eat. The old man addressed his companion who was now looking glum beside him. Yay, ramen, 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 I love ramen. Ramen in my tummy makes me happy. Ramen, ramen, I love ramen, the boy exclaimed in delight. His once foul mood brightened up at the thought of his favorite meal. Nope, anything but that. The old man retorted, cutting off Naruto's mantra of his favorite food item. But, I love ramen. You can't do this to me. Please don't take away my beloved ramen. Naruto whined. Oi, this kid's hopeless. You've been ingesting that junk for the whole duration of our journey. What the hell's wrong with that? The blonde boy interrupted, clearly annoyed by the fact that his ramen won't be the one to satisfy his hunger. And it's not a healthy food for a growing kid like you. So, quit complaining. It's either that or we wouldn't eat at all. The elder of the two continued as if there had been no interruptions. Naruto just shut his mouth and pouted. They continued on walking until his sensei suddenly stopped in his tracks. Here, let's eat here, his sensei declared. The young man stared at the old man incredulously. No, they haven't stopped at a fancy restaurant of some sort, or a shabby restaurant, instead they were now facing a bar. Lanterns lighted the entrance and Naruto could hear people boisterously laughing from inside, obviously drunk. The stench of alcohol reached his nostrils and it was anything but pleasant. This was a place where people get away from their problems and drowning themselves in sake. Intoxication was not a question, it's an added bonus to those who dare enter the vicinity. Ero Senin, are you out of your head? This is a bar for crap's sake. I'm not even allowed here. Hell, I'm not of legal drinking age yet. He complained and scowled at his companion, giving him a dark look. You're not drinking, Baka, I am. Besides, side dishes are sold at this bar and in places like these are most likely where we could find her. The aged man remarked. Naruto sighed in defeat and followed his teacher. They parted the flap as they entered the bar and true to his intuition, Naruto saw a bunch of people who were anything but sober. Okay, let's start eating. Ero Senin. Hey, Ero Senin. Naruto asked his companion who was now surprisingly silent. He looked up at his perverted teacher and saw that he was staring ahead, clearly zoning out in Naruto's opinion. Naruto waved his hands in front of his teacher's face, but the gaze he was wearing was unwavering. Ero Senin, what's the matter? Hey, is there anything wrong? What in the world are you looking at? Ero Senin, he asked as he followed his teacher's gaze. And then, his sapphire eyes saw her. An angelic figure seated several rows in front of them. She was holding her cards while downing several bottles of sake. How the woman looked so beautiful while drunk, he would never know. Naruto could tell that she's really drunk based from the bottles of sake in front of her. For the first time, his eyes saw the most beautiful being he's ever encountered. The woman's hazel eyes were also looking into his, and he couldn't understand as to why his heart was beating like crazy in his chest. For the first time, he was inflicted by these ever so differing emotions. For the first time, he wasn't able to tear his eyes off her. He couldn't understand himself. Get a hold of yourself. Baka, you don't even know this woman, and yet she's already getting onto you. He mentally scolded himself. Tsunade. The perverted teacher finally spoke after moments of silence. Jiraiya, is that you? The hazel-eyed woman asked in return. Naruto's companion stepped forward and began to walk towards her direction. Meanwhile, Naruto stood at his spot like a statue. He seemed to be rooted at that area, as he still couldn't stop his heart from pounding furiously in his chest. The world seemed to be at a halt for him. The woman wasn't looking at him anymore as she was acknowledging Jiraiya's presence, but still his nervousness was not ebbing away. Sweat began to form at his palms and he could feel his legs shaking. Damn, Naruto, what's the matter with you? He asked himself in frustration. Kuso, who is this woman? And why does she have this effect on me? Relief in a distance. The sapphire-eyed shinobi looked at the sky in a very morose manner. Dark clouds were forming and the air was getting more humid by the minute. Thunderclaps were heard not far from where he was standing. This foul weather wasn't helping his mood at all. It only agitated him even more. He knew that it wouldn't be long before he would be soaking wet from the rain. His brow furrowed even deeper as he thought about his current mission. It would take him approximately 3 days before he would arrive at his destination. He was now edging the borders of Fire Country as he stopped by a tree and looked at the distance. He creased his brow some more as he thought of the feasibility of his mission. I swear, the missions she hands me are getting stupider every time. And true to his prediction, droplets of rainwater fell from the sky. It started real slowly, but then the amount of which gradually increased as the seconds passed. Naruto was now dripping as he looked for a place to shelter himself from the chilly wind and rain. After several minutes of scouting, he finally found a fissure at the side of a mountain. He then slipped in between the cracks and began to warm himself. He created a bonfire from the twigs he gathered earlier and took out a packet of noodles from his satchel. He started to boil water, and when it was good enough, he dumped the contents of the instant ramen into the pot. As he waited for his meal to be cooked, he leaned on the wall and closed his eyelids. That Obaa-chan has really lost her mind on this one. How the hell am I supposed to grow food crops in a desert? Humph, stupid woman, he contemplated as his current mission's destination was in Sunna. That country is nothing more than a barren wasteland, and he wonders, why in the world would sane people choose to build a village there? The world is big, you know, and there are millions of places to start a village. Why there? Well, he can't do anything about it, and he just wasn't the type to barge in the Kasage's office and demand an immediate transfer. He knew that Gaara would slaughter him on the spot if he tells him that his village is nothing more than a horrendous mound of sand. He shuddered at the thought of Gaara releasing Shukaku. He just let out a huge sigh and checked his ramen. It has been months since Tsunade's inauguration as the 5th Hokage. He could remember her standing on top of the Hokage tower shouting out to the whole shinobi populace that she'd be the new leader of the Hidden Leaf Village. He remembers her shining face as the wind swayed her golden hair. She was so beautiful back then, and she still is now. So many things had happened since then. Yes, he had mastered the Rasengan after an encounter with the Snake Lord, Orochimaru. But not long after was Sasuke's betrayal to the whole of Konoha. That incident left a big scar in his heart, as his best friend was now pulled into the darkness and not even his efforts could bring him back. He shook himself and stopped his musings. Itadakimasu. He slurped his noodles noisily and burped real loud after finishing his meal. He then looked outside and saw that the weather was getting worse. Howling winds passed by and roars of thunder swept throughout. It seems like getting to Sunna would take longer than he thought it would be. He knew that Sunna was nowhere close to being an agricultural land. It is most likely that plants sowed there would wilt upon contact with the soil. Call it an exaggeration, but it is true. Rainwater barely falls on that strip of land, let alone support greenery. Kuso, If she were going to send me missions to preoccupy myself and quit chasing Sasuke, she'd have to do better than this. Baka, whoever heard of planting in a desert? He had been going on missions like these sometimes alone or with other teams. He had been paired with different people as Team 7 had disbanded prior to Sasuke's betrayal. But so far, this mission had been the most ridiculous one he had ever gotten himself into. This mission has both been a blessing and a curse. A curse because of its insanity and a blessing, because he can finally distance himself from the person that has been causing him an inner turmoil these past few months. Right after his first encounter with the Godime, it seems like his feelings for her grew to the extent that he'd want to be near her more and more each passing day. And right before his eyes, she becomes more and more gorgeous to him. It's dangerous at the same time an exhilarating experience for him. Never before has he ever fallen in love with someone this deep. Sure, he had a crush on his teammate, Sakura, but that was nothing more than a crush. This time, however, was much more different. This feeling of his for the older woman struck him to the core. He's gotten himself way in too deep, and it's a miracle if he could tear himself away from her. The older woman knew nothing of his feelings, of course. It would be a total pandemonium if he'd suddenly jump at her and give her a beep. He couldn't risk himself being turned into a pulp by her very fists. But thank Kami, that he still could rein himself before all hell breaks loose. It's getting harder and harder each day not to hug her or touch her, anything to get her close to him. But Naruto knew these feelings should remain buried. Say he'd destroy the friendship they'd managed to create all this time. That friendship is better than having nothing at all. So every time he faces her, he'd pretend that his feelings for her didn't exist. He then resulted to constant bickering with her, sometimes shouting obscenities that he himself found hard to believe. He'd call her an old hag, when she's far from looking old. Age-wise, that might be true, but her appearance doesn't give that away. He would later berate himself afterwards for doing so, but those were just some ways to prevent him from slipping and revealing himself to her. He hates the situation he's in, and quite frankly he doesn't want to be dragged into this mess that he created. So Naruto sighed once again and drifted off to sleep. He would think of his problems when this mission would be over. But in the meantime, he'd just have to doze his problems away. And he was gone. A mop of silky blonde hair was found amidst the mass of parchment that lay askew on top of a desk, the owner of which was resting contentedly on top of a huge mahogany table. Small snores could be heard from that person, and a drop of drool threatened to fall from her soft crimson lips. She was mumbling something unintelligent from as she drifted off to the land of dreams. A soft sigh was heard from her lips as she shifted to the side to make herself more comfortable. It was a fine day in Konoha, and the rays from the sun passed through the windowpane of her office as it illuminated her features. Soft red lips, straight nose, and a skin like porcelain graced this wonderful woman. She was the epitome of an angel sent from heaven. She looks so peaceful in her slumber when truth is told. She's a terrorizing persona when she's wide awake. In fact, a single flick of her slender finger would be enough to send anyone into oblivion. She's both feared and respected in the village of Konohagakure no Sato. Meanwhile, a certain orange-clad shinobi chuckled at this little thought. He had been staring at this angelic figure for God knows how long, and he hadn't been successful enough to be able to tear his eyes off her. A small smile played on the young man's lips as the revered leader of their village was murmuring something about bottles of sake in her sleep. Even in her unconsciousness, the woman still thought of that intoxicating drink. The shinobi chuckled once more at the sight before him. He can stay like that forever, he mused. Staring at her was enough to take his breath away, and is content with just being in her presence. He had seen her asleep a dozen times before, so this is nothing new to him. The Hokage seems to enjoy naps these days, and opting to avoid mountains of paperwork in the process. Her assistant, Shizune, would then be left to do all the dirty work. He had arrived not too long ago from his mission in Sunna. It had been an uneventful mission for him. There were no enemies to be defeated. The only real enemy for him in Sunna is the sweltering heat. He felt as if he was enclosed in a microwave oven. That, to him, has been the only challenge so far. He was supposed to report to the Hokage about his mission's events, but when he entered her office, she had been dozing off. He looks intently at her one last time before clearing his throat. As much as he would love to stare at her all day, time is of the essence, and he doubted her assistant, Shizune, would be happy if she could see her slacking off again. Tsunade Baa-chan. Wakey wakey. Hello. Wake up, you sleepyhead. Naruto bellowed at the sleeping form before him. The golden-haired figure stirred at the rude awakening. She raised her head slowly to acknowledge his presence. Her fists curled into a tight ball as she shook in fury. It looks like there's a massive wave of killing intent in that small room, and Naruto felt the hairs at the back of his neck stand up. Perhaps he shouldn't have screamed at her. Now he's worried of what she might do to him. The Hokage raised her sts as the young man before her cowered in fear. Anyo, Tsunade no Ba-chan, we could talk about this, right? Gomenasai. I didn't mean to. Aargh. Naruto screamed when Tsunade's fists met his head. Ouch. Ouch. OWWW. He touched his crown tenderly, which was now apparently producing a small bump. Humph. Stupid brat. Do that again and I won't hesitate to kill you. I was in the middle of a beautiful dream, the Hokage said, reminiscing the dream she had. Yeah, right. How could a dream about sake be beautiful? Naruto muttered sarcastically under his breath. Tsunade shot him a threatening glance. Did you say something, lad? She asked him menacingly. No, I was just doing some breathing exercises. Inhale, exhale, he breathed. There, I'm done. Ahehehehe. The village leader sighed disapprovingly at Naruto's lame excuse to save his hide. She then turned to him. So how was your mission? Tsunade gave him an inquisitive look and a knowing smirk. The shinobi before her curled his fists and trembled in annoyance as he recalled the events that happened to him in that good-for-nothing mission he was sent to. The scorching heat, the sticky sweat, and an awful lot of bad memories were the only souvenirs he acquired from that assignment to Sunna. Gah, that mission was a practical joke. It's nothing but a hoax. A hoax, I tell you. Whoever heard of planting in a barren wasteland? I swear, the only welcoming party that hailed me, there were a bunch of tumbleweeds rolling along with the wind. He complained while pacing back and forth across the office. Tisk, you should be grateful that I still send you missions after that last attempt to save Sasuke. You almost died, you know. And this is the thanks I get. Tsunade leered at him. Naruto paused for a moment. It's true, he almost gotten himself killed, but the missions she hands him are very unreasonable. Well, at least give me more, say, challenging missions. The ones where you get to fight thugs and such. Those were the missions I was hoping for, Obaa-chan. Not babysitting stuff, Naruto stated in a matter-of-factly. The buxom blonde just shook her head at Naruto's musings. I can't give you dangerous missions after that last stunt you pulled. We can't have you risking your life once more for that traitor. You've suffered so much damage from that pursuit. You've had medics working around you round the clock after that. For now, you just have to deal with D-class missions. Tsunade explained to the grumbling boy. Humph. Naruto sighed in a huff. Suddenly, the windows opened and came in a mysterious figure. You're with a white long hair and a really weird outfit. The kanji on his Hittite held oil on it, and with him was a very large scroll allegedly containing the contract for frog summons. You should go easy on the boy, princess. The old man spoke. They all turned to the person speaking. Jiraiya was perching on the windowsill wearing that trademark smirk of his. Naruto widened his sapphire orbs at the newcomer. Ah, Ero Sennin, what are you doing here? Wait, where the hell have you been? I've been waiting for you like eons to give me proper training. Hey, Ero Sennin, pay attention. Naruto rambled while pointing at him. The old man scowled. How many times do I have to tell you? I am not Ero Sennin. I am the great frog hermit, you fool, and until you get that right, I won't give you your training, and for the record, I was conducting my research. He winked at him. You gotta be kidding me. Tsunade shook her head in frustration. Jiraiya, you're at your perverted ways again, aren't you? Everybody knows Jiraiya's so-called research isn't a scientific exploit of some sort. Well, it's far from being scientific. It's best described as a peeping session at the women's baths for his novel, Makeout Paradise. The sly old man gets his information and inspiration from the innocent ladies to create the Orange Book of Perversions. That perversion, or so you call it, is a bestseller Tsunade. You see, this man right here is a world-class writer, biwahahaha. Jiraiya declared haughtily. Humph. That's why women wouldn't come anywhere near you, you perv. The Hokage said angrily. The frog hermit just chuckled at that comment. He inched himself closer to the irate woman. He then whispered to the Hokage's ear, "Ah, you're just jealous, princess. Admit it, you've been wanting this fine piece of a man right here." Jiraiya said, pointing to himself. How dare you? Why, you imbecile. Pervert. Tsunade stuttered, apparently scandalized. Her cheeks were flushed from the white-haired man's devious comment. The old man laughed even more at Tsunade's flustered state. "Oh come on, you've been crushing on me ever since we were young genins. Admit it, admit it," Jiraiya teased, while tickling the half-laughing half-angry Hokage. Stop it, ahahaha. Stop it, you pervert. That tickles, ahahaha. Tsunade pleaded as she was on the verge of tears from laughing too much. Meanwhile, Sapphire Orb stared at the two people teasing one another. He looks at them in a grim manner as the couple were looking more and more like lovers in his eyes, bickering and laughing together like there's no end. He shut his eyes as he tried to drown out the thoughts of Jiraiya and Tsunade enjoying themselves together. He can't understand the dull ache he feels in his heart right now. He doesn't understand why it pains him to see them looking cozy with one another. Naruto couldn't take it any longer. So before he would do something stupid, something he might just regret later on, he turned towards the door and left the scene that grips his heart into pieces. Maybe it was better that way. Being away from them would be much safer, because if he hadn't restrained himself, he would have jumped at his sensei right then and there. They would have found out about his feelings for Tsunade. He couldn't risk that happening. And so, he decided to turn and walk away. Confrontations. The hidden village of Konohagakure is a prestigious village amidst the regions of Fire Country. It is surrounded by lush greenery well veiled in the landscape. This village is led by a powerful ninjas for generations. The fifth leader of this particular village is a steadfast woman whose strength could rival or might as well surpass that of Hercules. Although the said leader is vicious enough to make anyone shudder in fear, she also enjoys spending some of her time in Hokage Tower. And as of the moment, she's pretty much preoccupied not with work, no, not work, but with a certain person she sort of despised as a child. The buxom blonde hollered hysterically as a man in his 50s, and not to mention slightly perverted, tickled her up to no end. She wore a face, which looked like she was torn between enjoying herself and at the same time irritated by the old man's incessant tickling. Okay, stop it. Biwahahaha. Stop it, you old geezer, stop. Tsunade pleaded helplessly, as she wiped the tears that came from her eyes from the laughter. She whacked the old man's head as she said so and successfully pried her nemesis away from her. You give up so easily, now don't you? The frog hermit taunted the irate woman. Stop poking me, I don't find it amusing anymore. Tsunade frowned at her childhood friend's mockery. She straightened her green robe as she tried to smooth down the creases that formed on the garment. You're such a child, she remarked. Well, thank you. I've always known I'm looking younger every day. Those research sessions really do rejuvenate me. You should try it sometime. The old man advised his companion, who was currently snorting at him. No thank you. I don't really fancy peeping through a spyglass at some women's baths. Tempting, but no, Tsunade told him. Now, let's get serious. What news do you bring? Is the Akatsuki on the move again? Any clues on the whereabouts of Orochimaru? Ooh, what's with the business-like tone? Jiraiya goaded. The Hokage gave the white-haired man a withering look, which elicited a gulp from his throat. Fine, I need to see you tonight. That statement left Tsunade's jaws hanging open. What? Jiraiya asked irritatingly as the woman before him was staring at him disbelievingly, her mouth agape. Are you asking me out on a date? She raised her delicate eyebrows at that question. You know, I would never go out with a pervert. The frog hermit chuckled at that. You've got the wrong idea. Let me rephrase what I've said earlier. I needed to discuss something with you, and besides, you're the last person I'd take out to dinner. ugly woman. Jiraiya rolled his eyes at that. A look of understanding showed on the Hokage's face as she nodded at the old man's request. I see. Hey wait, did you just call me ugly? Tsunade's eyebrows twitched. Is that a rhetorical question? Jiraiya teased. Now back to business, it's a really important matter I'd like to talk about. So it's best you won't be late. 7. At the bar near the hot springs. Got it. Okay, we have enough of Hatake-san to go around. I won't be late. What is that we need to discuss? The blonde-haired Hokage inquired. It's about Naruto. He had been on top of the Hokage monument for quite some time now. Looking at the village at a distance proved to be therapeutic in Naruto's opinion. He'd been trying to calm himself ever since he saw his sensei and Tsunade enjoying each other's company. He knows that he ought to be ashamed of his actions a while ago. But if he stayed there for another moment, he could have done serious damage to the frog hermit. Well, not really serious, but he could have wrestled the old man right then and there. And he'll have to explain himself to them, a situation he'd rather not risk. Kuso. Forget about her. She's like your grandma, for crying out loud. That had been his mantra for the past couple of months. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for him. No matter what he does, he can't get rid of the woman's angelic image in his head. Tsunade is like in her what? 50s. Technically, that woman is old enough to be his great-grandmother. Although he tried to glue that fact on his head, still his heart would let him feel otherwise. If only that woman's face would be wrinkly or saggy with so many spots, or she would be like the old hag I've read from Hansel and Grey. Telephone. Stupid children's book. I bet that would have helped. Yes, he imagined the Hokage in this not-so-delightful image, but still, none of his imaginary antics worked. Try as he might, that woman's got something even Naruto can't pull away from. Every day he's closer to losing his composure. Jiraiya had been the latest victim of his jealousy. Last week, Tsunade's assistant in filing paperwork, Azumo, had been the victim of his envious eyes. He almost knocked the man over when he pushed him not too lightly as he went out of Tsunade's office. Naruto swore that Azumo was hitting on her the day he gave his report to the Hokage's office. Poor guy. It was getting way out of hand and he knew that. Unless he would stop this fiasco he created, there'd be no stopping to his jealousy. It seems like every male within a 5-mile radius to the gorgeous Hokage would be subject to his prying eyes. Perhaps it's time that I tell her the truth, he murmured to himself. Not long after he said that, he shook his head. No, telling her my feelings would be the end of me, but if I don't, I might go crazy. What to do? What to do? He asked himself as he paced back and forth in deep thought. Finally, he sat down heavily in frustration. A decision he might later regret was already formulated in his mind. There's no turning back now. I have to tell her. 7 o'clock was the proposed meeting and yet, the old man who started it all was terribly late. Tsunade had 2 bottles of sake already. Not that she's worried she might fall over in drunkenness, she can hold her liquor well. She ped her fingers impatiently as she waited for her supposed date to arrive. She poured herself another bottle of sake when she heard flaps swishing, signaling her companion's arrival. You're late, Tsunade told the man who sat next to the stool she's currently occupying. A bottle of sake please. Jiraiya ordered the bartender who scuttled away from them to get his order. Well, I got a bit held up. Turns out there's a nice research spot nearby, and I just couldn't help myself. The old man said. That excuse signaled Tsunade to give the old man a contemptuous look. Keep your excuses to yourself, old man. What is it about Naruto that we needed to talk about? She asked as she took another sip of sake. The renowned frog hermit heaved a big sigh and received the sake he ordered from the bartender. I see there's no use dilly-dallying. Well, here it is, Naruto has a crush on you. Tsunade froze at Jiraiya's word of mouth. What makes you say that? She spluttered as she nearly choked on her drink. Oh come on. That boy hadn't been successful enough in hiding his emotions, Jiraiya explained. PFF'd. Jiraiya, what in the world are you talking about? She waved her hands dismissively. The old man rolled his eyes. Isn't it obvious? Those stolen glances, the way he turns crimson when he's beside you, that jealous look he gave me a while ago, I swear, he's got the signs of a crush written all over his face. For the love of Kami. Seriously, you're losing it, Jiraiya. The buxom blonde pounded her fist on the counter angrily. The bartender who witnessed the Hokage's outrage gulped in fear and edged as far away from them as possible as he busied himself to wiping saucers and glasses. Heim, calm down, will you? You're going to scare away the customers. He advised the flustered woman carefully. Gee, that boy is like a son to me. How could you accuse him of that obscenity? Tsunade roared. You know, there are two things a man can't hide. It's having a cough and being in love. Jiraiya stated in a matter-of-factly. He then turned towards the woman beside him to gauge her reaction. And what do you mean by that? She raised one of her eyebrows in question. All I'm trying to say is, you've got to talk to him. It's not like you haven't noticed it yourself. We're both ninjas, Tsunade, and it's no use telling me otherwise. Talk to the boy, he needs you. Jiraiya gave one last pat on Tsunade's back as he turned to leave. Nighttime in Konoha usually signals the chorus of cicadas and crickets. It's midnight and the chilly air isn't helping Naruto's confidence at all. He had been pacing outside the Hokage's office for quite some time now, and the person who's plaguing his thoughts hasn't arrived yet. He's so nervous that he thought about walking away 100 times now. But he made a promise to himself a while ago and he wasn't about to break it. After all, he's not the type to go back on his word. Calm down. Calm down. How bad can it be? You're just going to tell her how you feel, right? But unfortunately that line of thinking wasn't helping him subdue the knots forming on his stomach. Suddenly, a woman's silhouette came across the landing. A blonde head then emerged from the stairs as Naruto stared at her approaching form. His sapphire orbs glanced at Tsunade's form worriedly. Apparently, the woman was anything but sober as she reeked in the smell of sake. Their eyes met as she stood a few feet away from him. Naruto gulped as the butterflies inside his belly increased tenfold. It's now or never. I love you, he stammered. We need to talk. Perplexed. It's now or never. I love you, he stammered. Now what? Naruto thought. He had finally got his feelings out in the open. He never knew that confessing his affection to someone be so nerve-wracking. And the worst part is, he couldn't even get himself to look straight at her and make eye contact. We need to talk. Those were the words he heard from the woman before him. He was surprised. Really. It seemed like moments after his confession, a passing wave of silence came upon them. It just surprised him to hear her voice. Her tone doesn't have a hint of any emotion within it. And that's what worried Naruto. He knew from the Hokage's facial expression that she wasn't at all amused. She had been drinking. That's what Naruto concluded after seeing her disgruntled figure. Sure, this isn't an appropriate time to confess his love for the older woman, but what else can he do? He already did what he came to do, and it's not like he could take them back. It's too late. Those words he said earlier had been delivered and those words couldn't possibly be pushed back from his mouth. As soon as he had confessed, that brought the nail down his coffin. Haven't you heard me? I said, we needed to talk. Tsunade repeated, still in that dull tone of hers. Her slender fingers wrapped themselves on the doorknob of her office. After she pushed the door wide open, she then motioned for him to follow her inside. The blonde-haired boy snapped out of his reverie. Oh, okay, he said nervously as he trailed right after her. Tsunade sat on her chair and folded her arms right before her ample bosoms. Explain yourself, she ordered sternly. Oh, this can't be good, Naruto thought as he glanced at Tsunade's austere face. The Hokage motioned him to sit on the chair before her. He began shifting his weight on his other foot. Do you even understand the weight of what you've just said a while ago? Tsunade cut him off before he could say another word. Did you ever think of the consequences of what you've just confessed? I can explain, okay. Just hear me out. Naruto said meekly as he met her hazel eyes. Now he's really worried. The Hokage's voice just now sounded really uncompromising. Tsunade massaged her temples and sighed resignedly. You'd better. Now let me hear it, she urged the boy whose hands were now slightly shaking. What I said back there, I mean it. I love you, and I know I shouldn't be. Naruto explained as he lowered his eyes from her prying looks. He shifted his weight again nervously as he gulped to continue. It's appalling if you're an observer, and I know I'm 4 decades your junior, and by all counts what I'm feeling now is severely unethical, but what? Tsunade raised her delicate brows in question. I can't stop thinking about you, from the day we've met. I just wanted you to know that I haven't meant for it to come this far. I tried, really, I did. Naruto sighed. He wondered if he had to explain any longer, he'd put himself in the verge of tears. Not really a manly attitude, and in front of Tsunade. Tsunade looked at Naruto. Clearly the boy has trouble expressing himself. Who wouldn't? She's good enough to be his grandmother, and the boy, well, is more like a brother or son to her. But still, the nervous person before her harbored romantic feelings at her to be considered taboo in society. The thought of him having romantic feelings towards her never crossed her mind, although lately, she found it hard to deny the fact that the boy indeed liked her more than a mother or a surrogate sister. She tried to tell herself that Naruto was looking at her in a way a brother looks up to his sister for the past couple of months. But lately, Jiraiya's allegations seemed to make a lot of sense now more than ever. If only I was 30 years younger, then maybe. Not long after the thought crossed her mind, the revered Hokage mentally slapped herself. What am I thinking? Surely I'm not tolerating him, am I? Anyo. Oba-chan, are you okay? Naruto asked the Hokage worriedly. She had that scandalized look on her face, which alarmed the anxious boy before her. The contemplating woman suddenly snapped out of her stupor and fixed her eyes on the blonde-haired lad. Naruto, perhaps it's time that we both get some rest. Why don't you head on out while I think things over? Today had been awfully stressful for the both of us. So good night, or shall I say good morning, ahehehehe. Tsunade said as she pushed the boy forcefully outside her office. Nani. Wait, you're not angry at me. Those were the words she heard from Naruto before she shut the door completely. Tsunade rested her back against the door as she sighed in misery. Moments later, that certainly didn't go well as planned, she mused. Her plans were supposed to include her scolding Naruto. Situations like telling him off, urging him to dismiss that ludicrous idea of falling in love with her were supposedly part of the whole arrangement. She sighed dejectedly as she opened the door to see if Naruto wasn't lurking nearby. Seeing that the coast was clear, she then trudged onto the west wing of the Hokage Tower where her room was located. She walked on with a dark cloud hanging over her head. Never has she lost control of the situation just like that. She thought this was just another matter that can be settled in just a sitting. She thought the situation with Naruto would be settled in a breeze, apparently not. The boy proved to be more trouble than what she initially thought. She pushed back the door leading to her bedchamber and slammed the oak door close as she hurriedly plopped her figure onto her mattress. Tsunade groaned into her sheets as she lay face down on her bed. Damn that Naruto. That boy is giving me much more headaches than all my paperwork combined, she thought as she rolled herself over and faced the ceiling. What happened to the calm and collected Tsunade? The Tsunade before would have settled this matter flawlessly. Such a simple task, and yet I can't bring myself to do it. Why can't I? She muttered dejectedly to herself. Is it because I can't bear myself to see him get hurt? Or is it? The Hokage paused to consider. Then it hit her. She widened her hazel orbs in surprise. No. It can't be. Shish. Desperately tried to deny the thoughts that came spontaneously on her head. Could it be that I'm falling for him all this time? Could it be that I've had this feeling go unnoticed? She asked herself in realization. Stupid. She gripped her golden locks in frustration. No. I'm just drunk, that's all. Yes, that must be it. It's the sake that's in my system. She stubbornly denied the thoughts that she herself found hard to believe. I can't possibly be in love with Naruto, right? Tsunade asked herself before she drifted off to sleep. Can you keep a secret? Yuto dragged his body towards his rundown apartment. He had thought of the worst-case scenario, but the meeting with the Hokage earlier was certainly not one of them. He thought after his confession, he would be subject to tremendous torture. Instead, Tsunade only made him explain himself. Although it wasn't the least bit comfortable, he was glad he got it off his chest. But her reaction a while ago worried the blonde-haired boy. He was sure that the Hokage was very livid the moment he told her of his true emotions. What he didn't understand was the change in her behavior not long after that. He was certain that the buxom blonde had so much left to say to him. What could she have been thinking? He mused. He pushed the door leading his bedroom and took off his sandals. He then undid his hita. And placed it on top of his bedside table. Afterwards, he unbuttoned his jumpsuit and changed into his sleeping clothes. Naruto settled himself on his bed and gazed out of the window. His sapphire orbs watched as the full moon illuminated the whole of Konoha. The tranquil atmosphere didn't exactly reflect Naruto's tumultuous emotions. What he's feeling as of the moment is a dull void in his chest. Something that he couldn't quite place. Right now he's envious of the rest of the villagers. If only he'd lived a life of normalcy. He wished his problems would not be like what he's experiencing now. If only he wasn't chosen as a Kyuubi vessel. Then he'd be happy right now. A smile would then be plastered upon his face, a genuine smile. He'd like to live a life without any worries. If only. The shinobi life doesn't permit you to make lots of options, after all. Your existence is limited to serving and risking your life for the village. There is no such thing as living your own life. For it would always involve other people. There's no room for affairs. He gave out a heavy sigh. He wondered if exposing himself out in the open would prove to be a wise decision. But in his case, it's hard to get his hopes up. He isn't exactly a luck magnet, more like an entity bestowed by lots of bad luck. Ever since he was a kid, he had been condemned by the village people for a crime he didn't commit. It wasn't his fault that many lives were wasted because of a monster, now sealed inside him. Naruto had been chosen by the Yondaime as the container for the great-tailed beast. Though this incident should make him a hero, the villagers thought otherwise. Life had been hard on him and he doubted it would ever change. Naruto glanced at the alarm clock, which read, 1:30 a.m. In 5 hours, he would be meeting Sakura for their daily training. They've been doing this a lot lately. Their training menu would consist of honing both of their taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu and stamina. Although, quite frankly he need not need training for stamina because he's overflowing with it. He was just there to accompany Sakura. He knew she'd been feeling down because of Sasuke's betrayal and Sakura needed him as a friend. And he wasn't about to let her down. Apparently the pink-haired Kunoichi's way of coping with her frustrations was by sending all of the trees of Konoha flying and reduced to splinters. Naruto truly feels sorry for the animals that have lost their homes due to Sakura's violence. If she continues channeling her rage like that, he's certain that Konoha would be left with hardly any trees at all. That's why he continued to train with her not only as a friend, but also as a person to remind her that she's had enough training for that day. Kami, spare the trees. Setting these thoughts aside, he started closing his tired eyes and made an effort to sleep. Ring, ring, ring. Tsunade awoke with a start. She reached for the alarm clock and pushed the snooze button. She rolled to the side and slept once more as she clutched the satin sheets closer to her neck. Her lips gave out small snores slightly muffled by the pillow she's hugging. The sunlight passed through the windowpane as the rays illuminated the beautiful woman's sleeping form. Just then, the double oak doors swung open and in came a figure. The female figure strode towards the slumbering woman, a look of displeasure plastered upon her face. She nudged the sleeping Tsunade in the hopes of waking her. Now irritated by the Hokage's lack of reaction, she shook the woman almost violently. Tsunade grew led and swatted the hands that were disturbing her sleep. The other woman was now trying hard not to lose her patience as she continued shaking their stubborn village leader. The blonde, tired of ignoring the other person in the room, slowly sat up from her position. Tsunade stretched her arms and gave out a huge yawn. She then rubbed her eyes and peered at her companion glumly. I believe I didn't order the wake-up call, Shizune. She addressed the other woman with a frown. The woman called Shizune shook her head at the Hokage's remark. I'm not going to let you ignore your paperwork again, Hokage-sama, she countered. Give me a break, Shizune. Couldn't we just put it off until afternoon? Tsunade complained as she got up from her mattress. Tsunade's assistant widened her eyes in shock. Seeing the poor woman's appalled reaction, Tsunade snickered. Just kidding. Shizune, I swear, you worry too much for your own good. She placed her hands on her assistant's shoulders consolingly. Tsunade then grabbed a towel inside a drawer and headed on to the bathroom. I'll just freshen myself up and I'd do the paperwork thereafter. Okay, she called right after her. Tsunade then shut herself inside the bathroom. She undid the tie of her robe and turned on the shower. Her face suddenly turned serious. Her features now donned a frown as she contemplated on the events that happened last night. She knew it all hadn't been a dream, although she wished it was. She never thought there'd come a time when she wouldn't know what to do. Normally she'd be able to get through this situation if she hadn't been disturbed herself. She knew she hadn't imagined Naruto's confession, for she heard it clearly. There was no mistaking the boy's words. I love you, he said. She hasn't heard of that phrase ever since Dan, her boyfriend a long time ago, died. Now that she heard those words once more, she didn't know how to react properly. She was angry with Naruto for feeling that way towards her, and yet she couldn't help but feel moved by the boy's attempts. Tsunade finished bathing and turned off the shower. She then toweled off the dampness in her body, and afterwards, she wore her trademark green robe. After that, she went down the hallway leading her office. It seems like doing tons of paperwork would help her think of anything else but Naruto. And so, with a new resolve, she pushed the doors and for the first time in her life, welcomed her former debacle, paperwork. Naruto, you're late. A kunoichi's scolding voice reached the ears of a certain orange-clad shinobi. The boy hurriedly ran towards his irate companion and gave her an apologetic smile. With his left hand, he scratched the back of his head before facing the pink-haired tree destroyer. Naruto then bowed down low and mumbled, "Gomen Sakura-chan." He looked up at her scowling face and smiled in a feeble manner. The alleged tree destroyer just rolled her eyes in disgust. "Naruto, I know you're trying to look cute, but it doesn't work on me, baka." Sakura yelled at her companion, who was inching away from her in the fear of getting bonked in the head. "Ah, Sakura-chan, couldn't you at least forgive me? I'm late just this once. HMPH, that's what you said last week and in the previous week. Before you know it, you're going to turn into Kakashi-sensei." The pink-haired kunoichi huffed. "Of course not. At least I don't give lame excuses like getting lost in the wilderness or something. I am very reasonable, you know." Naruto defended himself with an outraged look on his face. "Okay. What is it then? Why were you late?" Sakura asked the blonde boy testily. I didn't sleep well last night," Naruto reasoned. His companion just raised a pink eyebrow at that. "Ha, I knew it. You're turning into Kakashi-sensei. That, my friend, was a lame excuse. You've got to do better than that, you know." Sakura sneered at Naruto. Naruto answered back, "Sakura-chan, what I said is true. I haven't been able to get some shut-eye, believe me," he told her with saucer-like eyes. Sakura thought about his excuse and weighed the truth of what he said. She then turned to him and asked him a question, "Why weren't you able to sleep?" "Naruto, I've known you to be a heavy sleeper. I find your excuse hard to believe. It's just that something's bothering me lately," he began. "What is it? What's bothering you?" Sakura cut him off before he could say another word. I can't tell you," Naruto told her dejectedly while he hung his head. Sakura frowned at Naruto's rejection and figured that he must really have some kind of burden on his shoulder. "Ah, come on. What can't you possibly tell your bestest best friend?" The kunoichi nudged her companion playfully. Sakura-chan, can you promise not to tell anyone?" Naruto asked his companion warily. Sakura, on the other hand, was looking at him excitedly. "Of course. Cross my heart and hope to die. And besides, if I tell a soul, I'd treat you to Ichiraku every day." Sakura promised and crossed the top of her chest. She then smiled at Naruto reassuringly. Naruto's face brightened at that. "Thanks. I really needed someone to talk to. I just didn't know who to trust." He sighed morosely. "It's all right, you can trust me. We're friends, right?" She reassured him once more. "Let's go someplace to sit, then you can tell me what's bothering you, nay." "Okay," Naruto replied as he followed Sakura, who was heading towards the shade of a tree. Sakura sat down first. Naruto followed suit. He looked at her worriedly, still thinking twice about telling her. He isn't exactly the type of person to open up his intimate feelings with another person. Besides, he didn't know that Sakura was that much of a listener. Sakura sensed his hesitation, placed her hands on top of his and squeezed his fingers. "It's all right," she told him. Naruto sighed and smiled meekly at her. He took a deep breath and prepared himself into telling her. "Sakura-chan, I've fallen in love," he merely stated. "With who?" Naruto felt like someone took away his voice. He's unable to speak, too scared to tell Sakura that it was her medical teacher who's been plaguing his thoughts. He knew he should trust her, she's his friend after all. But his uncertainty got the best of him as of the moment. "Naruto." Her voice broke out of his thoughts. "Who?" she asked him once more. "Sakura-chan. Promise me you won't tell anyone." "I promised, didn't I?" she assured him for the umpteenth time. "It's Tsunade. I've fallen in love with Obaa-chan." He finally mustered up all his courage and told Sakura. Sakura stared at Naruto's features incredulously. Her mind has come to a temporary halt at what the blonde-haired boy just said. It felt like someone suddenly took the daylights out of her. What Naruto exposed to her didn't quite register on her head as she fought hard to deny the truth behind Naruto's confession. Sakura-chan. Sakura snapped out of her reverie as she finally absorbed all of what Naruto had just said. Her eyes widened the size of saucers when it finally hit her. "What, you're in love with Tsmmmnaummph?" Sakura burst out loud, but Naruto covered her mouth just in time. She almost had their secret blown over, as her voice was loud enough to be heard by the whole village. Sakura-chan. Calm down," Naruto pleaded as he fought to hold her squirming body down. "MCNTHBRTHNHNGH. He heard her say something unintelligent. "What?" he asked, letting go of her mouth. "I can't breathe." "Oh," the blonde boy remarked. A wave of silence swept through them. None seemed interested in breaking the deafening silence. No one made the ulterior move of speaking in the fear of saying something improper. Naruto fidgeted in his position and peered at Sakura through the corner of his eye. Sakura also did the same. When their eyes met, they immediately turned away as if scalded by hot boiling water. "So?" Sakura's uncertain voice shattered the silence. Tsunade-sama, huh?" she asked him again. "Yeah." He nodded in confirmation. "I see. Yeah, that is indeed a big problem. Keeps them vocal cords in check." Both Naruto and Sakura sat under the shade of the tree staring listlessly into space. Neither one of them spoke a word since Sakura's, all too tactful, observation which sealed Naruto's impending doom. Silence encompassed the both of them as the wind swayed the dandelions on the meadow. Perhaps this was the most awkward conversation, or lack thereof, they had ever had. It's as if they had found the grasshopper on a blade of grass remotely interesting, or not. So was their situation, both looking as if they've been possessed by a statue spirit, unresponsive, unmoving. "This is weird," Naruto muttered under his breath, not looking at his companion. "Tell me about it." The pink-haired Kunoichi heaved in approval. They've been at this kind of silent agreement for what seemed like hours. Seriously, these two needed to get a life other than staring at no particular object. "So," Sakura spoke with a sing-song voice, obviously bored with the entire soundlessness they were in. She stretched her legs as she peered at the blonde boy beside her. "Nani?" It took a moment before Naruto registered the voice of Sakura saying something to him. He was so deep in hot that he barely caught on what the other person beside him was saying. "Oh, I'm sorry. What was it again?" I wasn't exactly paying attention." Naruto admitted, blonde head hung low. "No, it's okay. I don't really know what to say," she countered timidly. "I was just trying to start a conversation and apparently I beep at it." She then gave a mild chuckle. Naruto shook his head. "Nah, it's my fault. I started this whole loving the Hokage, who's like your grandma fiasco. Really, I should be the one apologizing." Sakura-chan. Sakura studied Naruto's pensive expression. Never in all her years of being with him has she ever seen the boy this serious about something concerned with the matters of the heart. "Okay, Maybe she saw him this way when he promised her that he'd get Sasuke back. She, of course, was not naive of Naruto's feelings for her long ago, but Sakura couldn't see him as anything more than a friend. Although she wished that she could do something more to help her friend, anything. Naruto seemed to be serious about his feelings this time, she could see it in his cerulean eyes. He is indeed in love with her. Oh Naruto. Hey, why don't we take a stroll down the stream? I really do think that my legs need stretching as they're already beginning to feel cramped. Nay, what do you say? She asked him warily. Naruto turned to her and gave her a smile and a slight nod. Sure, was his short reply. Sakura brightened at Naruto's cooperation. She walked ahead of him to a path leading in the direction of the bridge where Team 7 usually met. She strode down the dirt road happily in the hopes of cheering up her crestfallen companion who was currently lagging behind her. She noticed the not-so-famous glum look on his face. Oi, Naruto, if you're just going to sulk there I might as well take of, she told him angrily. She figured that she might as well use brash methods in order to set straight the gloomy boy. She's grown tired of hearing another one of those heavy sighs coming from those lips, and it's making her feel depressed too. If she hears another sigh, there's no telling what she'd do to him, probably something horrible like death. They continued trudging down the path, and not long after that, Sakura heard the very sound that she most despised to hear. Naruto sighed again dejectedly, which in turn frustrated Sakura to the point of wanting to pull the pink locks off her scalp. She turned sharply at the fair-haired boy behind her. Just the sight and feel of him radiating an immense dismal aura made her itch to kick the boy's gluteus maximus, but she realized she wants the old Naruto back, the slightly perverted, annoying and loud brat she once knew. Perhaps it was time she knocked some sense into him. Look, she started. Now you're going through a hard-hitting point in your life. And even I couldn't do anything to make this all work out for you. But if there's one thing I know, it's that the Naruto I know would find a way to get through this. Rough times may lie ahead, but he always had this uncanny ability to succeed, so cheer up. Moping won't help solve things, you know. Naruto stopped in his tracks and stood in the middle of the dirt path wordlessly. His expression looked as if he was trying to absorb all of Sakura's words like the proverbial sponge. His face looked melancholic at that moment, but as if the words had penetrated. The glazed look on his eyes disappeared and was replaced with a look of understanding, drawn across his features. He nodded in a meek fashion and smiled at Sakura. You're right, he said. I've been too busy plunging myself with my problems that I forget what's truly important. It's still not the end of the world, and I won't back down from this challenge. He finished with as much determination he could muster. Sakura bobbed her head in agreement. That's the spirit. She patted her companion's back. So, is there anyone besides me that you've told? She asked him out of the blue. Naruto gave her an ignorant look as if he doesn't know what she was asking about. Really, Naruto could be absolutely dumb at times. No wait, he is dumb. She pondered. Sakura sighed in exasperation. Have you told anyone else about your secret? She rephrased her question in the hopes of making her dim-witted companion understand. Well, she waited impatiently for his answer, tapping her foot to show her annoyance. Oh that, actually, he trailed. So you've told someone else, huh? She noted dully. Then all of a sudden, her face showed signs of aggravation. Who is it? Oh Kami, you've told Ino. Is it Ino? Crap, that girl sure gets to news fast. She spoke angrily, apparently convinced that he'd tell Ino his secret. Naruto swore he heard Sakura growled under her breath. Although he knew Sakura to be short-tempered, he didn't quite understand why she'd be irritated of the fact that he didn't tell her first. Besides, he told the very first person he'd want to very much avoid right now. No. You've got the wrong idea here, Sakura-chan. I haven't told Ino anything. And besides, I barely know her. He explained. Sakura's ears seemed to perk up from the supposedly pleasing news she just heard. She breathed out a sigh of relief. Oh, so who? I've told her. She asked him, clueless as to what in the world he was talking about. I've told her. This time Naruto stressed it out to her more carefully. Sakura's eyes widened in realization. She might have misheard or misunderstood him. But still, does that mean the Hokage already knew? Good lord, no, that can't be. That would require some guts, right? Inner Sakura thought. Wait, Naruto certainly has guts, but telling her, was that even possible? Guard, this is so confusing. Her inner self ranted on and on. Sakura-chan. Naruto's voice broke in Sakura's train of thought. He noticed her mouth was hanging wide open in shock. Wait a sec. Did you tell her? She asked him, interest clearly aroused. Her jade orbs shone with apprehension and intrigue. Naruto noticed his companion's glittering eyes and was a bit freaked out by her weird switch in mood. Really, girls could be unpredictable at times, mood swings and all. Why yeah, Naruto replied rather reluctantly. No you didn't. Yes I did. No you didn't. Yes I did. No, yeah, no, yeah. Naruto spat back. Wait, cut that out. I told her, okay. Quote, who? Tsunade-sama. Who else? Hinata. The blonde boy scoffed as if telling the shy Hyuga of his secret was the most ridiculous thing ever. Sakura on the other hand, pondered on that fact. If Naruto indeed told Hinata that he's in love with Tsunade, she's sure the poor girl would turn pale and faint. It was known in the entire Konoha populace that she had a crush on Naruto. Only the ignorant boy beside her wasn't aware of her feelings. Ellipsis, 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 WHAAAAT. You told her. Sakura's 180 decibel voice all of a sudden pierced through the boy's eardrums. That's what I told you, sheesh. Naruto grumbled. Really? Why you told Tsunade-sama you lomvrrmphrrrh? Naruto's offending hands muffled in time with Sakura's outburst. He fair-haired Jinchuriki, clearly horrified by Sakura's outbreak, tried to calm her. Oi! Sakura-chan, keep it down, will ya? At this rate, the entire village would know about you. No, what? Please, you promised, didn't you? Those words sort of calmed the pink-haired Kunoichi. She glanced at Naruto's worried and distressed face and bent her head in humiliation. Really, she ought to check the volume of her voice. Now she had totally screwed up with Naruto. Bah, me and my big mouth. And not to mention big forehead, hee. Inner Sakura chimed in. Shut up, she told herself. Where do these random thoughts come from? Gee Gomen, Naruto-kun. She said apologetically. I didn't mean to. I was just surprised, that's all. And I really meant it when I said that I'd keep your secret. And all the trouble of telling me, and here I am voicing it out to the whole village. I'm so stupid. I promise, that won't happen again, I swear. Naruto didn't appear as if he heard Sakura's spiel of apology. The young man's face was instead graced by a wide grin. He appeared pleased with himself. Wait, Sakura-chan, did you just call me Naruto-kun? He sneered at her, stressing the kun after his name. He then laughed hysterically at his own jibe. Sakura snapped. It's as if a huge boulder made its way into her ridiculously large forehead. She immediately switched from sorry-looking mode into the I'm ready to kill a moron beside me mode. She radiated tremendous amounts of killing intent, which caught the attention of the alarmed-looking Naruto. Naruto turned his head to see Sakura's blood-curdling look. He gulped as if dreading his predicament. And much to his displeasure, Sakura's fists collided with his crown with a loud smack. He then gave out a pained yelp. Ouch! 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 He touched the back of his lump-laden head tenderly. Sakura-chan, you didn't have to hit me. He complained at her with tears in his eyes. Sakura, still pissed, countered the boy sternly. Don't push your luck, Naruto. Sorry, what happened? Sakura asked him regarding what happened after his declaration of love to the busty Hokage. Naruto was surprised that they're back on the topic of his confession once more. He merely hung his head, not meeting Sakura's gaze. Sakura, comprehending the implication of his silence, pressed on. That bad, huh? She asked him quietly. Naruto just shrugged. What are you going to do now? She asked him concernedly. She looked at Naruto's slouching form and felt sorry for him. Sakura was well acquainted of the pains of unrequited love. She'd experienced it firsthand with the bastard, Sasuke. I don't know, was his half-hearted reply. He threw a pebble at the running stream beside the dirt path they were currently walking on. The pebble created ripples on the water's surface, which reverberated outward. Sakura, who stared at his depressing form wistfully, asked, "She's like in her 50s, right?" Naruto nodded. Ellipsis. 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 She's like old. Sakura concluded dully, apparently running out of words to say. Garg. Sakura-chan, you didn't have to rub that in. Naruto complained with a wail. More talk, less action, and scheming. Tsunade sauntered out of her office, rubbing her temples in a slow circular motion. There couldn't possibly be anything more interesting than filing and signing paperwork. Of course, that was meant as the understatement of the century. Daimyos complaining about weeds in their territories, actresses wanting security from stalkers, and some other insignificant matters were buzzing inside her head ever since she entered her office and went over the dozen rolls of parchment that lay on top of her desk. Seriously, more and more people just don't know when to quit complaining. Even the simple task of feeding a goldfish sounds as if it was the most burdening task ever created. Why do they have to get ninjas for each simple task there were, when they could do it by themselves? She went on from complaint to complaint distastefully and with much scorn. She'd never been enclosed in her office for more than 3 hours, so what happened earlier was a record breaker. She had fallen asleep on that room on occasions. But those don't count as work. Tsunade felt as if she's on an all-time low, working extremely hard for the very first time to keep her mind off some things. She continued traveling down the hallway and turned to exit the Hokage tower. A smile graced her features as the cool breeze met her face. For the first time today, she had finally been able to breathe some fresh air. Afterwards, she went down the flight of stairs as she headed for the direction of the bar near the hot springs. The previous night's events have been plaguing her thoughts ever since. She doesn't know what to make of Naruto's confession. She wished everything had happened differently. If only she had a clear slate of mind at that time, then things wouldn't have come to this. So far, she hadn't seen him yet, which was good given that she doesn't know what to do with him. Her rational self was nagging her to tell the boy that he hasn't got any chance with her, but she just shoved those thoughts away in the back of her head. Clearly she isn't ready for such confrontation. Whether she liked the boy that way or not, she still couldn't arrive to a decision and opted to avoid the topic as much as possible. Tsunade reached the entrance of the pub and parted the flaps that graced its entrance. It swished behind her as she went inside. The room smelled like alcohol, which wasn't surprising as few early morning drunkards were already settled on some of the tables sipping on their prized sake. She looked around to see any familiar faces. It seems that there were none. She then headed for the counter and ordered 3 bottles of sake. The bartender immediately obliged the Hokage, who was a frequent customer of his pub. Her order arrived moments later as she poured some of the contents of the bottle to the cup she was holding. She swished the clear liquid before downing it. Her first sip felt if she hadn't had sake for a very long time. She welcomed the drink as it soothingly traveled down her throat. She figured 3 bottles were more than enough to satisfy her yet keep her sober. A training session with her apprentice, Sakura, was pending as she's supposed to meet the pink-haired kunoichi later that afternoon. She can't possibly show up smelling like a rotten egg of some sort, which would be a very bad example. The buxom blonde finished the remaining contents of her sake before she handed the bartender the payment for her tab. She then stuffed the change into the pocket of her green robe and turned to exit the stuffy room. On her way out, Tsunade caught sight of a crouching figure lurking dangerously close to the women's baths. She narrowed her hazel eyes as she strained to recognize the seemingly familiar patch of spiky white hair that graced the mysterious form. Her mouth formed a huge O as she realized the identity of the perverse figure. She walked straight towards the giggling man who was currently busying himself peeking at the innocent ladies who were soaking in the hot springs. Little did that spiky-haired man know that a sinister figure was looming right behind him. She began with a menacing tone, Baka. The man, called Jiraiya, looked up from his position to see his old teammate emanating an intense killing intent, slim eyebrows twitching in fury. Tsunade flexed her knuckles and hit the man's head with as much force as she could muster. How dare you? Peeking like that, you're a disgrace to all men. The Hokage boomed, her face flushed with anger. The patrons of the bath were alarmed after hearing that their privacy was violated. Most of the women who were submerged in the hot water were shocked to the point that their entire bodies have turned crimson out of embarrassment. Some of the women screamed aloud, "Eek!" before fleeing with their naked bodies. The bath was then filled with commotion as customers hurriedly grabbed the nearest towel they could find and scampered away from the vicinity. This, however, didn't at all amuse the frog hermit, who was hoping to get a clear view of his research. Now, with the fearsome Hokage channeling her rage towards him, he doubted if it would even be possible. His peeping session was by all accounts ruined. Wait. You don't understand. I was in the middle of my but the old man's pleas were cut off by another whack in the head. PFF'd. You and your excuses. Seriously, what do you get out of it, old man? The Hokage asked irritatingly. The accused Sannin donned on a thoughtful and a smug look before explaining, I know you wouldn't understand, you're a girl. And besides, I'm doing it so that I would be inspired to write the next installment of my all-time bestseller. Jiraiya then rummaged around for something in his pocket, and when he found what he was searching for, he took the intriguing object out. It was an orange paperback novel entitled Ika Ika Extreme. The Ika Ika series was a well-known erotic novel that was authored by Jiraiya himself. It was so famous that apparently some fanatics have decided to produce a movie out of it. I'm going to release it next month, so I need all the research I could get to ensure the best quality for my avid readers. The old man continued haughtily while waving his priced masterpiece in front of Tsunade's austere face. The irate blonde then pried the pornographic book out of the old man's hands and without hesitation, threw it to the hot stream nearby. The novel fell in the water with a plop and it sank in the riverbed. Jiraiya stared at the whole thing stock still. He tched as his book flew out of his reach and entered the flowing water. And without warning, the old man sobbed uncontrollably as he looked at his companion with tear-filled eyes. Wah, baka, baka, baka. He pointed his finger accusingly at Tsunade. My life's work, gone. Did you realize what you have just done? Jiraiya wailed, still crying like a child, rolling on the ground in frustration. What the wailing man received from the Hokage was her retreating form, clearly unaffected by Jiraiya's hysterics. Oi, Matt, Jiraiya called. He got up from the ground and brushed some of the dust that clung to his clothes and hurried after her. You didn't have to do that, you know, he told her when he caught up. Baka. Anyway, I have to go back to the Hokage Tower to train my apprentice. So I won't waste my time talking to you, Tsunade told Jiraiya in a blunt tone. The frog hermit, on the other hand, made a pained look on his face. That's not the way you should talk to me after disposing of my novel, he muttered. And by apprentice, did you mean that kawaii and super beepy pink-haired girl, Sakura, Naruto's teammate? Tsunade just gave him a withering look. She knew better than anyone that the Jiraiya was thinking about her apprentice in a perverted manner. He's probably imagining Sakura in a cute bikini frolicking around the beach, or so. That man's head is most likely filled with alluring females and their shapely bodies, 24/7. Really, how so many people find Ika Ika Paradise entertaining, she wouldn't want to know. Perhaps a lot of men now share Jiraiya's fetish for beep-y women. Sheesh, men along with their inborn stupidity, Tsunade thought irritatingly. She just continued walking towards the Hokage Tower, uttering not a single word to her companion. Silence enveloped the two as they continued to head on to the Hokage Tower. Only the sounds of pebbles crunching as they stepped on the dirt path were heard, and the occasional chirping of birds filled the area. Jiraiya scratched the back of his head. Normally, the woman before him would rant on and on about some mindless things like her gambling expeditions, but she seems to be dead silent. So, have you talked to him yet? Jiraiya asked pensively. The busty Hokage stopped in her tracks upon hearing his question. None of your business, she responded with a trace of animosity in her voice. She strode on without so much of a glance at the frog hermit. Sakura stared at the floor lethargically. Naruto's current situation with the Hokage is still bothering her. Seriously, T-boy couldn't possibly stay out of trouble. What could she possibly do to help him? After all, She knew she beeped when it comes to love or affairs of the heart. For instance, let's take the case of Sasuke and her relationship. The truth is, they don't have any relationship at all. She doubted if the stoic Uchiha even considered her as a friend. Sakura gave out a heavy sigh. She seems to be doing that a lot lately. Any minute now Tsunade Shiso would enter the laboratory and start tutoring her. And so, the jade-eyed Kunoichi composed her appearance and prepared for her sensei's arrival. Moments later, her Shisho arrived walking past her uttering not a single greeting or recognition of her presence. The Hokage strode towards her desk and opened the compartment revealing some papers with diagrams of the human anatomy. Good afternoon, Tsunade Shisho. Sakura bowed in greeting. The Hokage didn't seem to have heard her as she was busily rummaging some files in the compartment. Sakura studied Tsunade's expression. She looked really distracted. If she knew better, Tsunade clearly have something that's disturbing her thoughts, and Sakura had a hunch of what it might be. Tsunade approached her and handed the documents she found earlier. You go over these and when you're ready, I'll show you how it's done. Tsunade told her apprentice who was looking at her in a weird way. Is something the matter? She asked Sakura. Sakura instantly averted her gaze and said, no Tsunade Shisho. And I'll review these immediately. She excused herself and settled in the corner of the room where a couch was located. Sakura then began reading while Tsunade settled on a chair near her desk. The blonde laid her head on top of her desk, seemingly tired from all that's happened recently. She stared at the window not really looking at any particular thing. Her gaze was a bit misty in Sakura's opinion, who was again watching the Hokage's movements. Yep, it is Naruto that's Bothery. Her, Sakura thought after she heard Tsunade elicit a heavy sigh. Sakura just shook her pink head in consternation. This situation has gone way over their heads, both Naruto and the Hokage. If only I could do something to help. What, you're gonna flash your forehead and everything would be fine. Get a grip. Inner Sakura interjected. Oh, shut up with the forehead thing, now's not the time. And besides, my forehead is definitely out of the question. Sakura berated herself angrily. She looked at her sensei's still distressed form and felt sorry for her. It must be very difficult juggling work and personal affairs. If she were Tsunade, what could she have done about Naruto? Probably she'd ignore the boy's feelings and all will be settled then. The problem is, she's not Tsunade. She knew the Hokage was indeed facing a dilemma. What in the world could I possibly do to help? She asked herself in frustration. Setting them up is probably the most ridiculous. Then it clicked. Just then, Sakura's eyes widened in realization as she weighed of the plausibility of her thoughts. She smiled at her own genius and stood from where she was seated. Anyo, Tsunade-sama, I have to excuse myself. It seems something has slipped my brain that I needed to accomplish. So, I'll get going, Yane. She told the Hokage who snapped out of her reverie to watch Sakura turn and leave the laboratory. Oi, Sakura, is there anything more important to you than training? She called her apprentice. Apparently yes. This is in fact a life or death situation that I need to settle. Sakura called after her without so much of a concern. Tsunade just stared at Sakura's retreating form, clearly surprised at her apprentice's actions. Initiating the plot, Sakura ran out of the Hokage tower not really having a concrete plan in mind. Clearly the thought of setting them up was just an idea that popped in her head out of randomness. But right back then, she felt as if she had an epiphany, a vision, and it had felt disturbingly right. A girl's got to trust her instincts, you know. It's not every day that she thinks of something brilliant. Now all she needed to do was to make her non-existent plan exist. The big question is, how? She's got no dating experience, none whatsoever. If you consider pigging out with Naruto at Ichiraku a date, then she's seriously doomed. Sakura plopped her frame slowly on the grassy patch of the training grounds. She had been aimlessly walking around the village thinking of some way to work things out, but up to no avail. She can't let this opportunity go to a waste. After all, she compromised her training with the Hokage for this. Those two people are not the easiest couple to begin with and she knew nothing about setting up a date. It's not like she became infected with Ino's talent. That girl could set up any couple in no time. And she can't ask her for help. It is known in the whole village of Konoha how big her mouth is. If Sakura was loud, Ino could break any sound record in the world. She can't have her spreading Naruto's secret like the gossip monger she is. Sakura watched as the orange sky of the afternoon gradually turned a darker shade of red, then into a deep azure. It was already this late in the day as stars were starting to appear, twinkling in the night sky. Actually, she had some plans brewing in that pink head of hers, although none of them was actually sensible. To prove that her plans are not of worth, let's peek inside the back of her head, shall we? Plan A. The scenario goes like this: she dragged Naruto and Tsunade in a cupboard and locked them up from the outside. The enclosed space should probably get them close enough with one another for cuddling, a brilliant idea of a first date. Not really. She doesn't fancy the idea of Tsunade's monstrous strength crushing her when the blonde Hokage would get out. She's too young to die. Plan B. She hires ninjas to kidnap the both of them and leave them on some deserted island. Wait, she is a ninja. She'll kidnap them by her own hands, muahaha. Then the both of them would be all survivor, and camp out relying on each other for protection. But not long after that wild thought crossed her head, she immediately dismissed it. Shinobis can walk on water, you know, and they'd both be out of that island in no time. Plan C. She spiked both Tsunade's sake and Naruto's ramen with a sleeping serum. Drag their sleeping bodies and dump them on an old warehouse. And when they wake up, Viola, they're right beside each other. Though she's not exactly sure whether that plan would yield a desirable result. Probably the two would just ignore each other's presence and escape the warehouse. Plan D. Well, she couldn't think of one as she was busily berating herself for coming up with such ludicrous ideas. Bad Sakura. Bod. What to do? What to do? Think, Sakura. Think. She furrowed her brows in deep concentration. This situation makes her want to be mimicking the famous and dull lines of the lazy Shikamaru. She muttered his favorite word, troublesome, as she lay sprawled on the grass watching the sky as the daylight faded onto the horizon completely. Sakura was so deep in thought that she failed to notice a man's figure approach and started to settle beside her. The man sat carefully next to the unaware Kunoichi as he too stared at the sky vacantly. There must be something so interesting about it to catch the young woman's eyes. Why are you looking so glum, Sakura? The man spoke in a hushed tone. Dunno. Sakura spoke clearly out of it. Lon. Dark orb stared at the pink-haired girl as she continued with her stargazing. The man, seemingly unfazed by his companion's lack of reaction, reached for his vest and took out a book in the hopes of alleviating his growing boredom. He opened it to the page where he last read and began to pore over the said paperback in no time. Firm fingers turned page by page as if entranced by its contents. This movement was accompanied by the flapping the noise of paper. The sound reached Sakura's ears as her eyes widened in realizing that she'd been spacing out for quite some time, not noticing that she now have an intruder in her midst. She scolded herself for her lack of observation before she bolted upright from her sprawled position. Sakura hurriedly somersaulted a few feet away from the man she was with a moment ago as she donned on a defensive stance, taking out a kunai from her holster. Jade orbs peered at her initial location, trying to scrutinize the interloper's identity. Just then, as she's been struck by lightning, her piercingly loud voice filled the air. Kakashi-sensei, baka, baka, baka. She pointed her fingers at him with a wild and crazed look in her eyes. Yo, he held his left hand up in greeting. I thought I was going to be attacked or something, even worse, raped. Sheesh, why do you love to sneak up on people, Kaka-sensei? You're giving me a heart attack. She too. The man huffily as she settled beside him once again. The man named Kakashi chuckled at his student's words. Sakura, I think it's your reaction time that's slowing. If this were a battle you'd be dead by now. I know, she finished for him pathetically. She hugged her knees closer to her chest as she stared at the ground pensively beneath her. The silver-haired man then looked at his student questioningly. Normally this pink-haired Kunoichi would ramble on and on about senseless things, now this seemed different. Sakura was awfully quiet. Too quiet to be Sakura. Is there anything wrong? He asked. He just received a cold shoulder from his student whose eyes were now glued to the soil, searching for earthworms perhaps. Kakashi just sighed and decided not to push the matter further. After all, he's not much of a talkative person. Right now, he's having difficulty discerning the words of his book that he had to squint really hard to see the letters, and so, he took out a flashlight and read on his dose of porn. Anyo, Kaka-sensei, Sakura spoke after the long silence. He asked without even tearing his eyes from the dirty novel. Have you ever, fallen in love with someone? Someone older than you? She started meekly, twiddling her thumbs nervously as she did so. The copy nin widened his solitary eye in surprise. Of all things, he didn't expect this from Sakura. Nani? He asked her again just to be sure he heard her right. Boy problems, huh? He asked the kunoichi. Well, not exactly. She elicited a sigh. It's, forget about it. She ruffled her hair furiously at that. Ma, calm down, Sakura. I'll lay off the subject if that'll make you feel uncomfortable. He creased his eyes as he tried to calm down the flustered genin. Akura directed her jade orbs at her teacher, somehow relieved that her sensei was not that much of a nagger. But right now, she felt that she needed help on the very thing that's been bothering her. Dates are so not her forte. And if she could ask anybody for the best advice in the world, that would be the man who's sitting right beside her. But if she tells him, that would mean breaking her promise with Naruto. No, you see, I sort of, no, it's just that, I made a promise not to tell anyone, So there, she stuttered, still fumbling with her fingers. So by that, you mean, another person is having that sort of dilemma other than you? Kakashi asked. Sakura let out a huge sigh before answering, yes. I see. And did you say that person's having trouble on an older, Kakashi's voice trailed off. As he was unable to determine the gender preference of that, troubled romantic woman. Sakura finished for him. Woman, so the problematic fool is therefore a male. The copy nin deduced. Honestly, he sounded like Sherlock Holmes telling his assistant, Watson, that the greatest mystery of the century has just been uncovered. It's Naruto, isn't it? Sakura's eyes widened in shock. Naruto's secret is out, but how? She hasn't slipped, has she? Damn it, she cursed herself under her breath. How? Well, it's not that hard to figure out. And you don't really care about your other male peers, of course, with the exception of Naruto. Am I right? Sakura nodded an affirmative. And don't you worry about me, I can keep a secret. So, now let me guess. Someone older than him, right? Kakashi said thoughtfully. Sakura nodded once again. So you're planning to intervene? He asked her. Well, yes. Their relationship isn't moving anywhere, and quite frankly, Naruto isn't looking his best nowadays, she explained glumly. Just before she went to Tsunade's training, she and Naruto had a little chat, and she didn't fail to notice the eye bags that managed to appear round the boy's eyes. And when she offered to treat him at Ichiraku's, believe it or not, he turned it down. Talk about his depression. Next thing she knows, that boy's going to turn into a living zombie. So let me guess. Someone older, Let's see. Tenten. No. That Hyuga girl, Hinata. Sensei. She's just our age. And I thought the both of them would hit it off. I remember that girl having a crush on Naruto. I could remember her imitating a tomato whenever he's around. Priceless memory. Priceless. How about Yamanaka Ino? Sensei. What? She's older than Naruto by a month. Quote. The one Naruto's got his eye on is someone much older, Kaka-sensei. How about that Sunna girl, Tamari, was it? Much older. See, could it be Kurenai? Well, she is pretty, but no. Don't tell me he's got the hots for that masochist, Mitarashi Anko. You're not even close. Sakura, I'm running out of kunoichis to enumerate. Wait a minute, it's Shizune. Nope. Come on. A little help here. I just mentioned everyone, Sakura. There's no one left. Kakashi pouted under his mask. Unless it's the Hokage. Ahahaha. The old woman sure knows how to hide her wrinkles well. He chuckled. Sakura, however, became expressionless. You may laugh now, but guess what Naruto saw in her? She sneered. Ahahahaha. Kakashi did a double take. Quote. Sakura began pulling the grass beside her. Tsunade-sama. Troublesome, isn't it? Who knew? She continued to pull on some of the grass blades as she said so. Kakashi just street. Ared at the field in front of him, a dumbfounded look visible on his lone eye. He seemed at loss for words as he kept his Ika novel inside his pocket. Naruto's current love interest appeared to be more interesting than rereading the pornographic novel. Very funny, Sakura. Very funny, he said, apparently stumped. Oh, now you think it's something to laugh about, Kaka-sensei. Sakura arched one pink brow. You mean, you were serious? He asked her incredulously. That's just crazy. I know. At first I thought that it was a joke. When he told me, I didn't believe it. I was skeptical just like you are now. But just one look in his eyes, I could tell that he's got the love bug. Sakura shook her head in amusement. She remembered looking at Naruto's almost glistening orbs when he spoke of the Hokage. His feelings go more than just a mere infatuation, and he almost looked hurt. Crazy as it seems, you'd never think Naruto was capable of such endearing emotions. Who would have thought that beyond the happy-go-lucky exterior lays a sensitive Naruto? Is it that bad? Yep. Cupid pierced his arrow on him quite deep. Sakura sighed. And I don't know if it's just me, but NK Tsunade Shisho has feelings for him too. I don't know, really. I might just be imagining things. What? Oh, I forgot to tell you, Naruto confessed. Now if Kakashi's lone eye could go any wider, it would be the size of a soccer ball. He nearly choked on his spit as he spluttered. What? He told her. Now this was the gossip of the century. Kakashi wondered if the Hokage took the news with open arms. Yep. So what happened? Sakura heaved another breath. I wish I knew, she said disappointedly. But from the looks of it, I think it didn't go well. Naruto looked so defeated when she told me. I'm not really sure though. Kakashi scratched his chin. What are you planning to do now? He looked at her in inquiry. Sakura's frame fell down on the grassy patch. She stared at the star-lit sky in defeat. I was hoping you'd tell me. Jade orbs continued to gaze listlessly at the heavens, unable to see the copy nin's amused look. Kakashi then leaned towards her and poked her shoulder persistently. Sakura then looked at her teacher and got up from her position. Kaka-sensei, she asked, a confused look drawn on her face. The copy nin just sniggered quietly, a mad look on his features. Sakura on the other hand was creeped out by her sensei's actions. Kakashi had that weird chuckling noise coming from him. The poor girl immediately inched away from him as discreetly as possible. Sensei, you're giving me the willies. The pink-haired kunoichi said to him worriedly. Kakashi ignored her. Instead, he spoke. I just got the perfect idea, a date. Sakura just bowed her head in disappointment. PFF'd. It's not like I haven't thought of that, she scoffed. No, listen, he then told Sakura of his plans. Sakura listened attentively, nodding her head at the right time. Meanwhile, Kakashi droned on, even drawing some diagrams on the soil with his fingers. Sakura plastered a smile across her face as she nodded once again at her sensei's instructions. Just then, Sakura's eyes became bugged out as she shook her head furiously at what her teacher just told her. No. You can't possibly, Kaka-sensei. Sakura retorted in disbelief. I promised, remember, and so did you. We can't. Hatake Kakashi sighed as he closed his eye. Look, if you want this to work, you just have to trust me. Okay, the silver-haired man countered, creasing his eyes up to reassure the muddled Sakura. Oh, all right, she muttered uncertainly. But if this doesn't work out, I'll burn all of your porn novels into a crisp, got that? She pointed at his chest in a threatening manner. Kakashi gulped. This had better work, he thought as sweat drops formed on his forehead. Resistance is futile. Are you sure this is gonna work? Sakura asked for the 1000th time, kicking the pebbles that were in front of her. Hopefully, else I'd have no more porn to read. Kakashi answered in a deadpan. Baka, this is more important than that monstrosity of a novel. She countered with a huff. Kakashi peered at his student amusedly. You say that now, but someday, when you hit puberty, you'd be able to appreciate the wonders that only this porn would bring. Sensei, Are you insinuating that I haven't hit puberty yet? Sakura asked in a sinister tone, curling her fists into a tight ball. Inner Sakura was flailing her fists furiously at her silver-haired teacher. While Kakashi, being the uncaring man that he is, merely shrugged. They continued to walk down the path while Sakura resumed with her, kicking the pebbles along the path, routine. She wanted to hit her teacher so bad. But knowing him, he'll probably just evade her attack. Kakashi, on the other hand, ran out of flashlight batteries and couldn't read the novel anymore. And so he just sat. He led on, squinting for the text as hard as he could, trying to make out the figures and symbols on the novel, although he really wished that there'd be a technique to infuse chakra with electrical gadgets. That way, he wouldn't be troubled about diminutive things like changing batteries. Wait, he can use the Kaiden jutsus, but he decided against it as it might burn his precious paperback. Anyo, are you really Sue? Kakashi gave out a heavy sigh. Sakura, the gray-haired Junin started, still pondering about his batteries. I know, I'm bugging you already, she said regrettably. They walked again, not speaking a word when Kakashi stopped in his tracks. Ow, Sakura blurted as she hit her forehead on Kakashi's back. The man was walking ahead of her before he suddenly halted his movements. You ready? He asked. Don't ask me if I'm sure. My entire stash of make-out tactics is at stake here. Sakura couldn't help but chuckle at her teacher's remark despite the nervousness she felt about their get Naruto and Tsunade together plot. I can't help but feel uncertain. Is there really no other way? I mean, do we really have to involve that person? She asked him once again worriedly. Look, you go find Naruto while I do my end of the deal, got it? He said before vanishing in a thick cloud of smoke. Sakura could only watch as the last of the smoke dissipated in the air. The night was young as a chilly breeze swept through a figure situated on top of the Hokage monument. His blonde hair moved along with the wind as he cast his gaze dreamily across the village's shadows. Now, if you'd thought being a 12-year-old was easy, then you're horribly wrong. If you're in a certain Jinchuriki's shoes, that is. I thought I'd find you here, I was right. A crisp feminine voice broke through the serene atmosphere. Naruto turned his head at his friend's voice. You are in deep thought. That's a new look, you thinking. Sakura spoke with a mild amusement in her voice. The blonde-haired boy just chuckled lightly at that comment. Look, Sakura started, a serious tone in her voice this time. I have a proposition to make, and you'd bet. Chair not say. No, else I'd be forced to strangle you to death, got it? She waggled her index finger threateningly at the boy who was now staring at her in confusion. Whoa, just what are you talking about, Sakura-chan? Naruto asked her worriedly. Shut up and listen. She clasped her hands around Naruto's mouth, muffling the sounds of protests coming from the now not so hyperactive ninja. Sakura breathed in deep. Despite the brave front she tried to show to Naruto, what she truly felt was a nagging nervousness in the pit of her stomach. She let go of Naruto and sat right across him. Listen, okay. Naruto nodded an affirmative, afraid of the consequences if he won't comply with the kunoichi's request. Sakura could be quite threatening, this is an understatement, mind you, despite her Tessie appearance, and he learned the lesson the hard way, i.e. being turned into a knuckle sandwich through Sakura's very fists. You see, we've sort of had this plan, Sakura began, which elicited a surprised reaction from Naruto. Wasn't she just threatening him a while ago? Who's we? He interjected while the pink-haired kunoichi began stuttering. Didn't I just tell you to shut up and listen? Sheesh. Sakura suddenly shouted frustratingly at him. I'm sorry. Sakura looked at Naruto's face in alarm. She had raised her voice at him for no reason at all, aside from the nervousness she felt. She shook her head and regarded her companion a bit more carefully. It's not your fault, it's just that, here goes. She took another heave of breath and miraculously, the words came out of her lips like a breeze. Me and Kakashi-sensei have figured out a way to get you and Tsunade Shisho together. Naruto looked stumped. What? I said, Kakashi-sensei and I have found a way to hook you in. You've told him. His tone aghast, sapphire orbs bulging to the extent that it almost gouged out of their sockets. Sakura-chan, calm down. I am calm. Naruto retorted angrily. Then why are you shouting? Sakura spouted back, cheeks reddening out of frustration. You're the one who started it. Naruto pointed his fingers accusingly at the girl. Did not. Did to. Did not. Did to. Did not. Did. Ga. Sakura-chan. How could you? Naruto half screamed, half asked, with telltale signs of tears brimming on his eyes. You promised. Stop screaming at me, dumbass. She yelled back at a defensive. Naruto looked at the ground below him, making it hard for Sakura to read his facial expression. But Sakura knew that Naruto's anything but happy with her right now. She was also aware of Naruto's attempts not to lash his anger or whatnot at her. Instead, he turned his back away from her and faced the quietude of the village's silhouette. Now Sakura's really in a pinch. She knew Naruto's reaction would somehow be like this, and she wasn't at all prepared for the wave of guilt she felt right now. Look, I know I promised, but that damn teacher of ours is so perceptive. Tisk, Sakura explained whilst pouting at the recollection. And I know that I'm partly the one to blame. If I wasn't so damn easy to read, Faye. I swear, Kakashi-sensei is quite the mind reader. Ah hey 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 hey. Sakura scratched the back of her pink-laden head comically. Naruto, I'm sorry, okay. She bowed down apologetically at him. She looked up and much to her dismay, she didn't get any reaction from the boy. Sakura pondered for a moment and approached him, laying a hand on his shoulder. Gomen, Naruto, if it makes you feel any better, I'll treat you to Ichiraku right now. What do you say? She asked him in a feeble manner, biting her lower lip uneasily. Naruto didn't seem to have heard her as he continued to gaze at the distance. The kunoichi chewed on her lip once more, waiting for him to say just about anything. Sakura looked on as she began to feel really irked at her companion's snubbing. She debated on whether or not she hit the boy. Silence encompassed the both of them once more as the chill of the evening wind passed them. Crickets and cicadas could be heard orchestrating their music in the atmosphere. Unable to restrain her annoyance any longer, she raised the fists that slowly made its way on Naruto's unsuspecting head. If her apology was left unnoticed, this sure didn't, as Naruto turned his head to face a fuming mad kunoichi. OWWW, what did you hit me for? Naruto asked her, flabbergasted. Baka, I've gathered my guts here apologizing to you and I didn't get much of a reaction. Faye, I know I'm at fault here, okay. But the fact is that, he knows already. As much as I don't want him to, what happened just happened and it's no use fussing about it now because we have a situation at hand, and if you're not willing to participate, then Kami forbid, I'd drag your rotten carcass to hell and back. Sakura huffed like mad after that long-winded speech. Sakura ch. At that, Naruto received another blood-curdling fist fr. Oh, none other than the short-tempered medic. Did I tell you to talk? Who told you to talk, Who? She demanded ominously. Now if Naruto was disappointed at Sakura just moments ago, now he wasn't sure if he'd be safe around her anymore. Sakura had that manic look on her eyes and it's beginning to creep the hell out of him. Maybe this is one of those days Shikamaru was talking about. He cool. Didn't quite remember what the lazy bum was telling him that day, but he did remember him mentioning something about tampons, although he doesn't have a damn clue what those are. He figured that he would never understand the likes of women. It's, as Shikamaru would say, they are indeed troublesome. Now back to the proposition I've been meaning to tell you, are you willing to listen to what I have to say? Sakura looked at him apprehensively, a calmer voice this time, but Naruto knew better. Naruto couldn't help but gulp a huge amount of spit and nod his head. He swore he saw Sakura's canines grow into fangs, like a vampire. Scary. Very scary. Good, Sakura declared. Well, sensei and I thought it better if you and Shisho go on a dinner date. Sakura, hep, before you're going to assume that me and sensei are out of our heads, I would like to reiterate that in the instance that you refuse, you'll be clobbered up by my fists, K. Sakura pounded her knuckles for emphasis. Seeing her companion's pale face, she continued contentedly, now let's talk about the details of your rendezvous, shall we? Naruto swallowed. This is going to be a long night. Women. He got himself dragged into this mess isn't of his own volition. They were now in the center of Konoha's shopping district, moving through a thick mass of people. It appears that a sale was going on, and drones of shopaholics became attracted to this place like a moth to a fire. He had been reasoning with his companion for the past 3 hours, but up to no avail. And shopping for what, you might ask? Clothes. Apparently his orange jumpsuit wasn't good enough for the pink-haired Kunoichi. And when he asked her what's wrong with his outfit, he just received the end of a menacing death glare. And so he decided, for his own well-being, that he'd away from the topic for the meantime. While the blonde boy contemplated on his own demise, the jade orbs of the Kunoichi spotted, yet again, another place of torture for her companion. Here, Sakura exclaimed excitedly, dragging the both of them to a boutique that looked just about the same as the last one they've entered. Oi! Sakura-chan, Matt. Upon entering, the Kunoichi immediately checked on the racks for clothes that might suit him. They've been going at this for quite some time now, and yet, finding his new outfit didn't pique his interest whatsoever. Only Sakura was gung-ho about this. Naruto could never understand why shopping for something as simplistic as clothes would eat up 3 or so hours of his time. Let's see. Sakura unceremoniously returned the garment she took out from the rack. Naruto studied Sakura's actions for their whole shopping duration. She honestly looked like a crab, scuttily here and there, looking not for scraps of food, but for pieces of clothing. It seems to him that all clothes, except his jumpsuit of course, were a hassle to the shinobi life. He was about to sigh dejectedly when something caught his eye. His features immediately brightened when he spotted a small rack in the farthest wall of the boutique containing the outfit he'd promised to wear for the rest of his life, jumpsuits. He immediately stepped towards his treasure trove of wonder, but before he could get any further, the Kunoichi's frame blocked him from taking any step closer. Stay away from those things, will you? Sakura asked him irritatingly. But Sakura-chan, they even come in pink. But not as soon as he had said that, the image of himself wearing a pink jumpsuit disgusted his thoughts. I'm just going to pretend I haven't heard that. Sakura stalked of once more to talk to the saleslady. But, he protested, stay away from that eyesore, she repeated before she conversed. With the clerk bringing with her garments. Eyesore. Naruto scratched the back of his head, wondering what Sakura meant by that. Sakura turned to him, a pleased look on her face. Naruto, however, wasn't sure if that was a good sign. Try this on. She handed him the clothing she was carrying a while ago. Naruto stared at the garment distastefully. What, are you going to try it on? Or do I have to drag you to the changing room? Sakura raised one pink eyebrow menacingly. The blonde boy sighed. Okay, I'm going, tisk. Naruto grumbled as he hurried inside the changing room. Make it quick. Hi, he mumbled lazily. And so Sakura waited, tapping her feet down the floor with impatience. She looked at the wall clock of the boutique and noticed that her companion was taking a really long time changing. Oi Naruto, still not done. Anyo. These things are very confusing, Sakura-chan. Naruto told her from inside the booth. Oh, quit dilly-dallying and get out of there. I want to see. This is just awful. Why can't I just choose those jumpsuits? He pleaded. Naruto, do you know why those things you call clothes are at the far side of this boutique? She asked. A slight twitch in her temples could now be visible. 'Cause they're cool. He guessed uncertainly. No, it's because they're a fashion disaster. Sakura huffed. Now get out of there, before I'll lose my patience and... Okay. Getting out now. Sheesh. Naruto reluctantly stepped out of the booth clad in the new apparel Sakura chose for him. The Kunoichi's lips curled into a smile. What now? Naruto asked. Perfect, she exclaimed while clasping her hands together in approval. Naruto spun around and complained. The cloth is itchy, I think. PFF'd. You've got no sense of style, Baka. She reprimanded. You want to look good in your date with Shisho, right? Don't I look good in my jumpsuit? Sakura just snorted. Now change back to those awful things you wore earlier. I'm going to pay for those, or not. Naruto, give me your wallet, she commanded. Why, the payment for that is coming out of your wallet, dumbass. But, he retorted, but Sakura's got her hand outstretched. leaving him no choice but to hand over his frog wallet. This sure is heavy. Sakura weighed the wallet on her hands before she went to the cashier as Naruto went back to the booth. With a heavy heart to change back into his normal clothes. Naruto held the plastic that contained his new clothes tightly round his fingers as he walked back to his apartment. Sakura and him parted ways not long ago. The package wasn't that heavy, but he sure did go home with a lighter wallet. He hoped Kakashi and Sakura's plan would work, otherwise he may never have a chance with the Hokage, ever. Sakura assured him that everything had been taken care of and all he needed to do was show up and display his self-confidence. His heart was thumping fast inside his chest at the prospect of his date with Tsunade. He sighed at the thought of her. He figured long before that this wasn't an ordinary case of puppy love, but the real thing. And he wasn't about to let both his teachers and Sakura's plans go to a waste just because he turned a cold feet. If this date means being with her for just a moment, he'd gladly do it. With that, he went inside his room with a content smile on his face. To be continued, and thank you for watching.